Now it's time for a review of what's making the headlines in the papers this morning with Arise most insightful analyst, Dr. Constance Ikoku. Good morning.
Wenga has come again.
But actually, we thought the break was going to bring some reprieve to some of the stories we've been reading. But what's in the offing?
No, a lot, Wenga. There's so much after that U.S. strike.
Indeed.
Yes, a lot still on that particular story, especially security as a whole. But how are you doing? How was the weekend?
Well, quite a restful one.
Okay.
Know, journalists, we are in the essential service sector.
Yes.
So duty calls sometimes.
Sometimes it calls every day, 24 hours.
Indeed.
Even when you want to rest.
Yeah.
All right, let's look at those stories that are shaping the agenda for you today. Hello there and welcome to the program. We'll begin with this day newspaper. Today, Nigerian front pages present a broad mix of security, politics, and economic anxiety. And this day has gone with the Minister of Finance, Wale Edun, dancing tension over the U.S. airstrikes in Nigeria. He has declared that Nigeria is not at war in an attempt to ease concerns of investors and partners of the country. In Kano State, Governor Abba Yusuf is set to join the All Progressives Congress as President Tinubu closes the deal with him. An NNPCL boss, Ojulari, says competition in the downstream sector, petroleum, is a benefit to consumers. Daily Independent writes about the federal government trying to provide guarantees to investors that the economy is indeed stable and reform-focused. That is the same thing that this day has reported on. This comes amidst all the airstrikes that we've been told about or that happened in Sokoto State. Nigeria's agricultural sector is said to have recorded modest recovery this year, while stakeholders maintain that gains remain fragile. Opposition African Democratic Congress member Atiku Abubakar is warning against regazetting the new tax laws without the approval of the National Assembly. While in Benue State, President Tinubu is speaking about the face-off between Governor Alea and Secretary to the government, George Akume, saying he will not fold his arms while the relationship between both men deteriorates. Leadership newspaper reports that the president has traveled to Europe, from where he will head to the United Arab Emirates. Hospitals have raised cost of services as insurance premiums rise, signaling a constant battle in the health sector. FA CEO Alan Onyema claims airfares in Nigeria are the cheapest globally. And U.S. congressman declares that President Trump is determined to stop killings of Christians in Nigeria. Moving on to New Telegraph, which gives us a snapshot of the year, highlighting the emergency rule in Rivers State and how it ended, how defections shaped the political space as well. Still on insecurity, Middle Belt Forum asked the U.S. to comb Sambisa Forest, Goza, and Lake Chad. All these places are notorious terrorist bases in Nigeria. And 34 lawyers failed integrity tests as they are barred from appointment by the National Judicial Council. To Daily Trust, which has turned attention to the Sokoto airstrike again and the likely casualties. And still on airfares, Airpeace CEO Alan Onyema is quoted as saying that airfares may rise beyond 1 million naira due to new tax laws. That would be preposterous. I'm wondering if citizens will eventually rise against the cost of living that is already out of hand. And Minister Nyesom Wike tells Governor Sim Fubara that supporting President Tinubu will not earn him a second-term ticket. What a threat. Well, the Daily Trust also has that story on Abba Yusuf joining APC. Vanguard newspaper this morning writes about how the federal government and the states are committing 93 trillion naira to fight hardship. It goes on to explain the U.S. airstrike and how the country's warship launched over a dozen tomahawks against Lakurawa terrorists in Sokoto State. The Punch newspaper reads about President Tinubu approving the cancellation of a substantial portion of the debts owed by the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited to the Federation account, wiping off about $1.42 billion and 5.57 trillion naira after a reconciliation of records between both parties. The debt cancellation also comes at a time when the Commission is struggling to meet its revenue projections for the year, leaving more questions than answers. Daily Sun leads with crisis in the opposition parties as Labour Party is completely unconscious, while the ambitions of Peter Obi and Atiku Abubakar split the African Democratic Congress. Oyo State Governor Seyi Makinde challenges Ayo Fayose to prove that indeed 50 billion naira was released to him for the Ibadan explosion. Fayose had earlier claimed money sent by the federal government for the victims of that explosion was not fully utilized for that purpose by the state governor, Makinde. Now let's go to the international headlines, beginning with the Times newspaper. The Times leads with Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer facing pressure to strip British citizenship of an Egyptian dissident whose past comments have drawn criticism. Alaa Abdel Fattah was freed from jail in Egypt and recently returned to the UK. Daily Telegraph has a similar focus on Starmer under mounting pressure to revoke citizenship of this particular individual following controversial social media posts. The Sun goes with a lighter news story of the wedding of Olympic swimmer Adam Pearty to Holly Ramsey. Holly Ramsey is the daughter of Gordon Ramsay. Daily Mirror has a prominent coverage of the death of French screen icon Brigitte Bardot at 91, including tributes and her cultural legacy. Daily Star also features the passing of Brigitte Bardot. Moving on to Daily Express, which focuses on domestic policy, where we have a potential shake-up of care home inspections that could put residents at risk under new proposals. The Daily Mail this morning leads with Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch urging the government to deport that Egyptian dissident who has called for the killing of British police in the past, saying that she does not want those who hate Britain to come to the country. Financial Times reads about Trump and Zelensky meeting with a photo of the two men on the front page. It also has business coverage on tech startups building a record $150 billion cash cushion to guard against a slowdown in AI investment. An newspaper leads with warnings from a whistleblower about potential new chemical war threats as peace negotiations over the Russia-Ukraine conflict advances. Now let's break down what these stories mean for everyday citizens, returning to this day newspaper. Let's start with the Minister of Finance, Wale Edun. He's trying to assure investors and partners that Nigeria is not at war after that US strike. We will need to do a lot to clean up the reputation and image of Nigeria after this whole thing is done, because diplomatically it's going to affect us. Also for those that are traveling, even if we say that it is a collaboration, at the same time it would do quite a bit of damage to our reputation.
I think that there have been lots of narrative that have trailed this U.S. So-called precision airstrike in Sokoto and some parts of Kwara State. And I think that in a long time to come, it's a defining moment that would underscore some certain fundamental issues in our polity. Concerns have been raised about national sovereignty, about the international, about the human rights, about the primacy of the civilian population. And I think that so many views have trailed this. Some have argued that you do not outsource the very important part of governance. You know that Section 14, Subsection B says that the welfare of the citizens and the security shall be the primary responsibility of government. So now it depends on how you say it. Some like Sheikh Gumi have said that instead of aligning with US, that could threaten the peace and security of the state and open the space for U.S. forces to take over the country. That they should be partnering with China, Turkey, and some other, and Pakistan. Pakistan has one of the strongest military in the world, but I think that more than ever, if you look at it, the expediency of the situation demands a radical intervention, which the U.S. has done. President Trump has said that there is hell to pay. Some have said that there is a problem with the communication structure, that you do not communicate such a development through the social media angle of a foreign power. So many angles to this, and I think that the federal government will need to do a lot to communicate more to Nigerians to restore confidence and also investor safety.
A couple of, like I said earlier, we will need to do a lot to clean up our global reputation after this collaboration and airstrikes ends against terrorists. The whole thing risks painting or reinforcing that damaging narrative of state fragility and security dependence, regardless of whether we're working together with the US or not. The way we see it is different from how international audiences often read military action on a country's soil. You know, it's usually seen as evidence that local institutions cannot fully take control of their territory or neutralize threats, which undermines, you know, Nigeria's long-held image as a regional power and security anchor in West Africa. And also, for those that are traveling, you know, Nigeria will now be seen as a hotspot for terrorism, although that has been the case for a while, but this also amplifies it. And that is why Minister of Finance Wale Edun is talking about this and speaking up and trying to assure investors and partners that Nigeria is not at war, that, you know, they should not take leave or, you know, leave the country. But it will take a lot. You know, Nigeria really has to demonstrate clear operational leadership and transparency and measurable gains over the period to win back the minds and hearts of people who are interested in either investing in Nigeria or continuing to be partners to the country. I mean, the deepening perceptions over time, I think, would hurt us a lot. So it is not enough for Minister Edun to say this. I think several government officials, there has to be a strategy. There must be a strategy. This cannot be ad hoc, because this is just the beginning of the strike. This is just the beginning of that so-called collaboration with the US. There's more to come, we are being told. It means that the government has to take time to devise a communication strategy regarding this and regarding Nigeria as a country, to continue to assure people that the country is what it should be, or that there's nothing to be afraid of, and there should be no concern concerning Nigeria. So we'll see how this pans out, unfolding story. The second story in this day reporting on the impending defection of Kano State Governor Abba Yusuf from the NNPP to the APC. Sources in both the NNPC and the APC, according to this day, have stated that negotiations have reached advanced stages. It has been confirmed that the governor has been trying to persuade Rabiu Musa Kwankwaso, his benefactor, to also join the APC, and he's convinced that that is probably or is the major way for him to secure a second-term ticket. We know that most governors want a second term. Daily Trust is also reporting the same story and says that barring any last-minute change, Governor Yusuf will decamp. According to Daily Trust, multiple sources said the governor is likely to defect with or without the blessing of Kwankwaso. The governor is said to have made this decision following consultations with stakeholders, including members of the State House of Assembly, local government chairmen, and some federal lawmakers from Kano. If this happens, it will be a disruptive move, won't it? It's going to be a big one for the APC.
Indeed, Kano State presents a very interesting outlook when you look at the political landscape of the country. A lot of people, political bookmakers, see it as the political powerhouse of the nation and has a swing force to it when you look at the electoral value of Kano State. The political culture of the people, deeply religious, they've shown so much fanatical devotion to politics. And now when you look at the political history of Kano State, now you have the Aminu Kano faction and you have the Rimi faction. And there is one myth and legend concerning these two factions, that none can win without the support of either one. But with the coming on board of the former governor of Kano State, Abdullahi Ganduje, there seems to be a shift in that political equation now. And all attempts to reconcile the two, remember during the time of Abdullahi Ganduje, failed to have that political reconciliation of Rabiu Musa Kwankwaso and Abdullahi Ganduje.
Yeah.
So now the concerns will be if there is a shift from the NNPP to the APC, who will be the leader of the party. I see both forces, both personalities as very uncompromising. That's talking about Kwankwaso and Ganduje.
Yes.
So now it seems again that same rhetoric of the race for political survival and the political future of Abba Yusuf of Kano State. Now, as against the political structure being held by Rabi Musa Kwankwaso, who would be contending with Abdullahi Ganduje as the leader of APC in Kano State. So it leaves a lot of political uncertainty in this move and a lot of questions to answer.
I mean, taking off from where you landed concerning the tussle of leadership if Abba Yusuf moves to APC, we know that between Ganduje and Kwankwaso, one of the reasons why it seemed like Kwankwaso was skeptical to move to the APC was because Ganduje was firmly against it. Both men don't see eye to eye. But what we are seeing now, we've been waiting for this news. Abba Yusuf is said to be planning to decamp whether Kwankwaso, who is his political godfather, approves of it or not. So indications are that if he does move, that means he also has, as we can see, 100% support of the presidency, and maybe a Kwankwasia or Kwankwaso may not eventually matter at the end of the day because he is governor. And most times when you are governor, you know, you are an incumbent, you may be able to swing it. And then if Ganduje is with him, because if he's moving to APC, that means, you know, Ganduje is probably in the know and there has been a deal that has been made. But back to Rabiu Musa Kwankwaso, so we have to remember that one of the things he said is that he doesn't want to be used and dumped. He had some conditions that he had presented to the APC before he would move. So maybe, we don't know, maybe those conditions were not met. We will hear more about this. But if Yusuf does decamp, it will signal a major political realignment in northern Nigeria, effectively weakening the NNPP. You know, Kano State is the only state they have at the governorship level, and that is where their influence lies. It also means that it will probably cut off that Kwankwasia dependence on Rabiu Musa Kwankwaso. So a lot is going to be happening there. And for the APC, let me land. For the APC, it will consolidate control in the northwestern part of Nigeria, and it will boost his chances ahead of the 2027 elections. Yeah.
We need to look at what happened in the build-up to the 2023 election, because I was in Kano covering the election and I saw the fanatical devotion, the popularity of Kwankwaso. Even I was at the local government of Kwankwaso, and it was a lot of show of affection. We saw the disabled, the rich, the old, and so it's clear that it's undeniable that Abba Yusuf rode to power on the popularity of Kwankwaso. And the political structure of Kano State is being held under the stronghold of Rabi Musa Kwankwaso. So it's going to create a lot of cacophony, a lot of political uncertainty, and it will be very interesting to watch how he navigates that landmine, that landmines of political godfatherism in the states.
It's not the first time, and it won't be the last. So we'll be bringing you more on that. Let's move to New Telegraph this morning. 34 lawyers nominated for appointment as judges of the Federal High Court failed integrity tests and have been disqualified. The integrity test is part of new guidelines approved by the National Judicial Council, introduced by the Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Kudirat Kekereekun. The goal is to sanitize the bench, admitting only people of character. So out of 62 nominees, only 28 passed the screening and will now face the National Judicial Council interview panel. Quite an interesting take on the corruption that is embedded and entrenched in the judicial system trying to clean up that sector?
Yeah, I say kudos to the reforms being spearheaded by by the Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Kudirat Kekereekun. He brought in this reform to get feedback from the feedback mechanism from the public on the integrity of judges be nominated by the Federal Judicial Service Commission, that have shortlisted about 62 candidates for the position of judges, and out of the 62 candidates, only 28 is making it as judges, and about 34 now had come under a lot of public petitions against questioning their integrity. So that explains why they failed this integrity test. But I think more fundamentally for me, I think it resonates the call for the judicial and electoral reforms, if you ask me. A situation where judges go cap in hands, beg for funding and all that should stop. It makes a mockery of the nation's judicial system, which is a fundamental pillar of the nation's democratic institution. There is no way. The judiciary is the moral strength, is the custodian of the moral pillar of any society. So the sanctity of that institution must be restored. In those days, you have this kind of mythical perception about the personality of a judge. You don't see them at parties. You hardly see them at public functions. They have this sacred, very high, impeccable social distinct social personality.
So this initiative is supposed to be rigorous, and we're seeing that it's rigorous, and it's supposed to prevent corrupt people and people that are completely unfit from continuing to the bench. And as we said earlier, it was introduced by the Chief Justice of Nigeria. And one of the ways they do it is that the names of these people are published for public input on their reputation. And secondly, the Federal Judicial Service Commission conducts an integrity test on each of them, and then comes back to make a conclusion on who is fit to continue. There's good and bad news here. So the good news is that we're recognizing the problem and making efforts to weed out these bad eggs within the system. The disqualification of these judges who failed in, the test underscores a deep credibility challenge within the judiciary, and the judiciary does not need this. On the bad news, while removing judges is necessary to protect the sanctity of the bench, it also highlights the depth of the problem that we're being faced, which we've talked about for years now. So it reveals how corruption and compromised officials destroy the entire judicial system. And so the test will be whether this continues to run effectively and well, and whether it's not corrupted again. So a good start, at least for now. There's one more story. The Leadership newspaper, if we can pull that up, Leadership newspaper, President Tinubu jets off to Europe as part of his end-of-year break, and he will move on to Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates for the 2026 edition of the Abu Dhabi Sustainability Week. This time around, they said he jets off to Europe. They usually say he goes to France. So why are they now using Europe now? Maybe,
in fact,
maybe
I had to call our Villa correspondent, Adesu Amoro.
Yes.
She's yet to respond. That which country precisely
exactly
has he gone to? Because I checked all the publications.
Yes.
I can't even lay my hands on the single country, and I wonder.
No. So this press statement by Bayo Ononuga says jets off to Europe, and I think one of the reasons why they're leaving out the name France is because of that controversial memorandum of understanding between Nigeria and France on the tax laws. People have not rested on that, so that's why they're leaving it out. But anyway, the African Democratic Congress is criticizing this trip, claiming that the country is in a situation of uncertainty and confusion given the airstrikes, and that, quote, that the president has lack of care, and that lack of care is scary. It says the president shouldn't be traveling at a time like this because of all that is going on. But one of the observations is that when you watch that video of the president leaving, you see ministers and ministers and governors. There was Governor Hope Uzodimma there seeing him off. There was Minister of State for Finance. Why do officials have to abandon their official duties to line up at the airport to bid the president farewell? I mean, it projects loyalty instead of institutional seriousness. Other than that, can someone explain to the country why, most times many officials are lining up? Why are they doing this? Why this practice? Really, the sense is that it weakens the principle that public officers are co-equals in governance, not courtiers in a monarchy. It also reinforces a culture of political subservience rather than governance, I think it's a poor use of public time and resources in a country that is facing urgent crisis. Nigeria grappling with insecurity, inflation, failing public services. The optics of officials spending work hours and time and public funds on ceremonial airport farewells sends the wrong message to citizens and to everybody. Your quick thought on that?
Yeah, my quick thought on that is that actually I would want to beg that we shouldn't waste too much time analyzing the sophistry, if you allow me, behind people abandoning their official responsibilities to come and see of the president. Perhaps that could be taken from our cultural identity, but that wouldn't do more harm than a president abandoning his country. Let's bring it on a layman's perspective, on a commonsensical angle. Would you leave your house boiling? Would you leave your house under fire? This is coming at the back of U.S. precision airstrike in the country that has thrown a lot of anxiety in the public space. And also, we had a Zamfara attack recently. So I think once again, we need to remind the government that the welfare and security of the people, according to Section 14, is the primary responsibility of government. So I think I see it's jetting out as a misplacement of priority, if you ask me. As important as it is highly misplaced.
Right. You may say that airport farewell is not significant.
No, it is, but I don't want
let's
us
leave
to.
That. Yeah. Let's leave that. It is significant. I mean, you don't go to other countries and see people, 15 people waving. Bye, Mr. President, please. To the international headlines, Israel is facing backlash over recognition of Somaliland. Somaliland seceded from Somalia in the 1990s due to civil war, but was never recognized internationally. So Somalia is demanding a withdrawal of the recognition. Somaliland broke away, like we said, in 1991. Somaliland controls part of northwestern Somalia and has its own constitution, currency, and flag. Arab and African countries and the Organization of Islamic Cooperation condemned the recognition as a grave violation of international law and the UN Charter. They say it undermines Somalia's sovereignty and could destabilize the Horn of Africa. Nigeria has a firm support for the sovereignty of Somalia. We have just a minute.
So I think this has sparked a lot of controversy in the international community with Israel, an unnamed superpower now, because it's not among the 5 superpowers of the world, but we know that is an emerging force in international reckoning, recognizing Somaliland. And the Arab countries have raised the red flag that it threatens regional peace and stability across the Red Sea and also in the Gulf of Aden. But when you look at it, they said that it questions international law. I think that section 1 of the United Nations Charter, subsection 2, provides for equality and right to self-determination. So these are some of the loopholes in international law that, well, the international law recognizes the right of self-determination, the principle of self-determination. But when you look at the political exigency in the region, you might want to be in that crossroad of which one do you go for, the primacy of the international law or the political exigencies that prevails over the region.
I mean, yes, there is a right to self-determination, but you're one country within the Committee of Nations, so you can't just become a country officially. It takes some processes. However, what does Israel stand to gain? I mean, because it's facing a lot of backlash. So This is seen as a strategic attempt to gain a friendly foothold along the vital Red Sea and Gulf of Aden shipping routes and to counter regional rivals. But at the same time, it risks diplomatic fallout with countries that view the step as provocative and illegitimate. It's a fast-moving story, so we're going to be hearing more on that front. Those were your headlines today.
Indeed. Yeah,